Hi, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and the viewer's choice build Eduard Sherman M4A1. So where I left off last time was the completion of the lower hull and all those components, and now it's on to starting with the turret, first part being the gun. So here's another case where you need to pay attention to which version you're building, in this case D. So this is the part setup I want to use to do it. So as I mentioned in one of my earlier videos, for the barrel, instead of using the two-piece kit barrel, I am using the Aber 35 L-135 US 75mm M3 barrel for Sherman M4 series tanks. Fits to all Tasca Sherman models with M34 and M4A1 mounts. So that is what I'm using. The kit barrel I'm sure could be worked just fine, but I like using aluminum barrels when I can. If it would have been a slide molded plastic barrel, I probably would have just used the kit barrel, but I didn't feel like messing with the seam, and I just really like these aluminum barrels, and they're priced really nicely. So the first thing I need to do, I've got all the parts cut out for it and ready to go, except for J20 and 21, because those are pretty small, and I didn't want to take a chance of losing them before I got to the actual construction. So I'll cut those out real quick like, and I'll be treating these like I do any other lifting eyes or grab handles or whatever. Just make sure they're the molding seam, the mold parting seam is taken care of. Thusly, and then using the good old to me extra thin. First thing I want to do here is I want to see there is a slight difference on either contact point here. One is sloped, one is a little flatter in relation to the lifting eye, so I need to see which way. Yeah, so the sloped part, the angled part, goes on the top, so that's something to take note of when assembling this. Okay, let that set up for a second, and then I'll do like I normally do and come back, put a little bit more around the seam to kind of get it to level out and look more like a weld than a seam line where something has been glued on. Okay, make sure those are lined up properly. A little bit more cement there and there where the seam is. There and there. Give it a little squish down like that. And voila. So we got those on there. So then let's take these poly sleeves, put them in place there and there, like that. And then these parts fit on there. And it's a nice friction fit, so you don't have to worry about them falling off. Then the coax 30 cal goes there. Make sure it's lined up right. Then these fit. In there. So it can be a little tricky. So I'm going to do one side at a time. And make sure it's seated in there really well. Hold it in place. Same thing on this side. Hold that one in place. And then what I'm going to do before this sets up too much, I'm going to make sure this gun is lined up perpendicular to the flat face of the this front cast part that holds the gun in place. So I'm going to let that cure up for a minute before I monkey around with it anymore. Alright, so using my gel super glue, and put some right around the contact point here where it goes inside the mount. And making sure that this part, well, let's see, let's get it. Okay, so just make sure it's bottomed out and flush. And then making sure this is facing the proper direction. I'm just going to barely make it contact where this part slides into this part. Now I'm going to apply some cement. And I'm going to have to swivel this down a little bit like that. There's two locating pins on the back of this that fit these two spots right here, so I just need to make sure that those go where they're supposed to go. So I'm going to put some on that side. And then this one here, carefully apply it there. Make sure it's bottomed out. And there we go. That part is done. And check the alignment of the machine gun with the main gun, and we're good to go. So set that aside to dry. And that concludes this portion here, doing the gun. All right, the next part, for marking C and D only, which is us in this case, have to assemble the M2 50 caliber machine gun mounts and ammo box. The ammo box is photo etch. There's some other photo etch parts that go on here as well, and then the styrene part. So I went ahead and cut out the receiver portion of the M2 and the barrel. And what I need to do first is in the front, where this cooling jacket is, I need to drill that out so the barrel will fit in. So I found a bit, and I have no idea what size it is. I just eyeballed it to make sure it was the appropriate size, or closely thereabouts. And then taking my pin vise, I start a little pilot hole to make sure it's centered. And I'm gonna push it over just a little bit. It's a little trick. If you start a hole and it's not really centered, wherever the side, if it's too close to this side over here, tilt your drill bit this way, start boring at an angle, and then slowly straighten it up, and it'll get that hole centered up. You want to do it, you know, when you initially start drilling the hole, so you don't end up with a big old wallered out hole. Wallered out's a technical term, by the way. And drill it. Straight as you can, keeping in mind that whenever you cement the thing, you'll be able to tweak it a little bit just to make sure that the bore axis lines up both ways. So let's see what we got here. Yeah, a little bit more. And almost there. Not quite. All right, that's good. So now, just as a note, I am not actually going to install the barrel yet. Actually, I got to drill that pretty far in there because it's got to go that far. Because like it looks like a little locking collar or something right there that needs to fit in there. So I'm going to keep drilling away on this for a few minutes and then come back once it's done. Alright, so the barrel's glued and I made sure it was nice and straight. And so the next part I want to do is I need to cut off these parts highlighted in red here that are going to be replaced with photo etch. This forward part here, which is that, and then this rear sight. Right there. And make sure it's nice and smooth. Like that. Alright, so those have been cut off. Now, next part I'll need to do is cut the photo etch parts off. Now, I'm going to cut them off and I'm going to clean them up like I normally do. I'm not going to go through it because the parts are so small it takes forever to video it. I think I've shown it enough in the previous episodes so that you know how I handle photo etch, and you don't need to see me do it again and drag this out. So I'm going to take care of those parts, get them cut out and ready to go to be put on the gun itself. Alright, here's a quick note on the photo etch. I'm doing the ammo box now. I've got the, oh my word, the gun sights parts in place. So that's done. So I did the actual ammo can itself, and what I did is I folded it all into position and I put it in one of my handy clamps here, and then I used my gel super glue and just put it in the seam of each part, and I'll let it sit for a while. So the next part I need to do is the lid itself for the ammo can. And I've already got it cut out, so I just need to sand a little burrs off where the part was attached to the fret. Get that cleaned up. And then using the old handy dandy photo etch bending tool, get that bent, try and get it as close to 90 degrees as I can eyeball it. Like that. Make sure that looks good. Okay, that looks good. So I'm not going to put the super glue on that yet until I make sure it fits on top of the can itself. So I'm going to cut out this PE4 and PE56 and get those all shaped, and then come back, and it should be just about done as far as the machine gun goes, or at least as far as the ammo can. Alright, so the photo etch has been glued onto the machine gun itself. The sight, which is really nice. I got the charging handle, the grip in the back, and then I assembled the ammo can. And I didn't want to do that, I think I said it earlier, but I didn't want to do this on video just because it is so stinking just crazy putting this stuff together. But basically, I mean, it was just a matter of folding together, and I used my my gel super glue to put inside the ammo can to hold the sides snug and all that. So that's done. So now that I've got all these parts cut off, so I have to assemble the mounts. The mounting hardware, I guess we could call it. So again, this is going to be some tricky stuff. So I think, you know, basically it's putting on these two sides here. There's a locating hole here and an ultra faint locating pin here. So test fit it on here like boy, this stuff is tiny. Okay, it goes like that. Yeah, it's a pretty solid fit for such a small locating pin, so that's kind of cool. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this stuff on and come back. There it is, the finished machine gun. A harrowing experience, to be sure, with all that photo etch. But it's done. So I'm going to set that aside. Then I can move on to working on the hatches. Okay, so one side of the hatch is complete. All there was on that was this little photo etch ring and the periscope, which was treated the same way with a little bit of tape for when painting actually happens. So the next thing is the other side of the hatch, and one thing to note is this part right here. It's kind of weird the way it's illustrated. It's not really clear unless you're familiar with the vehicle how that is supposed to go. So I'll show you that in a minute. The first thing I want to do is I want to put this grab handle, this handle on the outside of the hatch. There's locating pins and then two corresponding holes in the hatch itself. Put just a little bit more cement on there to make sure. Settles down really well. Okay, so while that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and cut off this other little ring, which is number 2 on the photo etch fret. Okay, all right, so let's see here. Let's keep this stuff together so I don't lose any of it. All right, so on the other side of the hatch, there is one ejector pin mark there, but that's not an issue because this pad right here is going to cover that up. So I need to make sure the sprue gate is cut off and is flush. And I'm going to use this cement here. Let's put a little dot right there in the middle. Make sure it clicks down in place. There's a couple locator pins to help with that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do the photo etch part with my gel adhesive, or my gel super glue. And real quick, like, before I forget, I need to sand the little burr off from where it was connected to the fret. This is the kind of stuff you don't want to drop. Now the nice thing about this particular photo etch part is there's actually a hole right there for this to go into. So you get a nice positive attachment point. Sometimes on photo etch it can just be, whoa, sketchy. Just like that. Okay, so we got that. Then the other handle for the inside. Boy, that was not cooperate. There's that. Put a little bit more cement on there. And then the last part is this here. Now, the way it goes, okay, this part here, there's a locating pin, and it goes right there. And you want to have it positioned like this. Okay, so let me get a little cement on this locating pin here. This is a detail that you often don't see on hatches on these things for some reason. Hold it up a little bit because it's not supposed to be laying down flush. Kind of let that set up for a second, and then I'll get it positioned the way I want, because it needs to be a little, just about like that. Okay, so that one's done, so I'm going to carefully set that aside so it can dry before I actually attach them to the hatch ring. Alright, the next part is to start working on the turret. So the first thing I want to do here is put these parts D6 in place, which are these lifting eyes. Now the nice thing is there's no locator pins or anything like that, so they give you this cool illustration here that you can set this on, and it gives you the vertical as well as the horizontal location for those. So just like that, and then make sure it's vertical. Put a little more cement. Excuse me. Like that. Give it a little push, and there you go. All right, so the two lifting eyes are in place. Now, I'm going to call it quits on this video right here, because I'm going to have to install this, and it's going to take some work to get these edges taken care of, and I want to show how I do that. And it could take a bit, and then I have to put all the rest of these parts on here. So I'm going to call it right here, and that will end part 6, I believe it is. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, please put them down below, or any tips, anything like that, put them down below, and I'll get back to you as quick as I can. So for the viewer's choice Eduard M4A1 build, that's it for this time, and I will see you all later.